No one talks about griffins and gargoyles. It's a secret. Forever. To the grave.
The Riverdale flashback episode has finally arrived, but did it leave you with more questions than answers? Let's break it down and find out just what happened. Rise and shine on, you lovely people. Lisa here, and after a week off, Riverdale's back with the much buzzed about flashback episode. First, though, a little bit of Riverdale news for you. In this flashback episode, we got to see Michael Consuelos, Bart Consuelos' real-life son, playing a young Hiram, which was actually kind of fun, and it was kind of trippy how much he looks and sounds just like his dad. But they're actually turning Riverdale into a family affair because they have announced that Kelly Ripa will be guest starring on the show as none other than Hiram's mistress. So I feel like that will be kind of fun to see. But let's talk about this flashback episode called The Midnight Club. So this episode transports us back to when the parents were juniors in high school and they really got into this Griffins and Gargoyles game, which caused a big death back then. So my thoughts on this episode, I actually don't feel like it was a necessary episode. It did seem like just some kind of gimmick or filler of sorts, but you know, it was kind of fun, and I think the kids, I keep calling them kids, they're like 20-something. I think the young actors did a great job, though, kind of transforming into their adult counterparts. But the fun part of this episode is it's littered with 80s and 90s references and Easter eggs. If you looked at FP's cast and you're a fan of it, it's very much the Losers Club lover from Eddie Kazbrak's cast. There's mentions of Heathers. They turn, obviously, you know how Riverdale likes to change the names of things, so instead of Forbes magazine, it's like Fives magazine. Weird things like that, but it actually is really fun, and of course, the episode is very much inspired by a ton of aspects of The Breakfast Club, hence having Anthony Michael Hall appear as Principal Featherhead. And yes, in short, if you don't want to stay for this whole recap, Principal Featherhead is the one who ends up dying at the hands of Griffins and Gargoyles. You guys know they couldn't kill off one of the main characters, because that wouldn't make sense in a timeline. They couldn't really kill off one of the characters' parents we haven't met yet, like Reggie or Dilton's dad, because, well, then those kids wouldn't have been born unless they were adopted, but that wouldn't explain why they look so much like their fathers. So yeah, Principal Featherhead was kind of the easy choice to kind of pick here. But on another note, for you Riverdale fans, a lot of you have actually been asking me for my thoughts on Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which came out on Netflix about a week ago. Honestly, I haven't had time to finish the entire show. I've gotten through 2 episodes so far. I had so much going on this past week that I hadn't planned on, so I didn't get to binge it like I wanted to. Plus, it takes me a little longer to get through shows about witches because that's just never been like a genre or a thing that's really called out to me. But I am planning on watching it. I'm planning on making some kind of video about it. Hopefully that is up in the next week or so, and hopefully it's not too late and you'll still want to watch it. But if not, that's cool too. I'll still put it up. But now let's just go ahead and break down this episode and find out just what happened. So, in our present day, Griffins and Gargoyles is spreading like wildfire. And whenever someone destroys one copy of the game, 2 more seem to pop up. So it's like, who is mass producing this? Does someone have literally just stacks of this game in a printing press and like somewhere to make chalices just hiding in a warehouse? It's Riverdale, so I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. This epidemic is getting so bad that Mayor Hermione even goes as far as banning the game. She says it is targeting impressionable young minds and it's dangerous. Betty then ends up getting a call from creepy coroner Dr. Curdle Jr., who did some digging and found the case file for the other death that he remembered that involved blue lips that he said sounded oddly like Dilton's. Betty takes that file right to Alice and demands answers. So that's when Alice begins the story of her junior year of high school and we get to see these flashback scenes. So we begin and end the flashback part of this episode as expected with our Midnight Club not being friends. They kind of know each other, but they're just more of acquaintances and in some cases strangers. But over the course of Saturday Detention, overseen by Principal Featherhead, they of course get to know each other. So how do they all end up in this detention? Well, the girls end up in detention because Alice and Penelope get in a fight, and Fred and FP are in detention for streaking as part of a Bulldog football tradition. And, you know, kind of not complaining. Actually, is that bad? I feel like they've been using so many shirtless scenes with KJ Apa that it's like you're supposed to remember that these kids are 16 or so, and it's kind of getting a little creepy, maybe? I don't know. Anyways, so in detention, they're all supposed to, of course, write a 1,000-word essay about why they're there, because that sounds pretty familiar, right? But like in the Breakfast Club, through detention, we learn so much more about our parent characters. They end up playing this game of secret something, whatever they call it, but essentially it's just them telling dark secrets about themselves. So Sierra is dating Tom Keller, but they are secretly dating because their parents don't want them dating someone so, quote, different from them. In other words, their parents don't really approve of interracial dating. Hermione seems tired of the life that she has, where her mom cleans hotels, so she's trying to find a way to kind of break out of that, and it seems like her way out of that is Hiram, even though he also has no money and is scum and is basically a criminal. But he's really determined to get out of Riverdale no matter what the cost, and getting out of Riverdale seems pretty appealing to Hermione. Fred, he's still that good wholesome boy you'd expect him to be. He just wants to stay in Riverdale his whole life, and he's been taking care of his sick father. He's also indecisive when it comes to music and sports, something we saw Archie deal with. There's also, of course, a cheeky mention about Fred wanting to run for mayor someday, and Sierra saying that sounds like a nightmare of a job, which we know she eventually had. Now, bad girl serpent Alice has a big secret too. She's found out she's pregnant with FP's baby. Yeah, that's how that whole storyline with Charles started. But when it's her turn to tell a secret, she deflects. Hermione even tries to help her so she doesn't have to, spill this pregnancy secret in front of everybody. So she deflects it and ends up, spilling one of FP's secrets. He's been posing as a Northsider when he in fact lives in Sunnyside Trailer Park. FP also reveals that his arm is broken courtesy of his serpent-leading father, who was not happy that FP wanted to go to college and not join the Serpents. Now, as far as Penelope, the show continues to kind of play up its creepy incest. Is it incest? Is it not incest? Storyline. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Penelope actually grew up at Sisters of Quiet Mercy, and the Blossoms went there when she was around 8 to see all the redheaded children and pretty much pick one. So they adopted her and kind of groomed her to be Clifford's sister and eventually what they call a life companion. So were these two never married in the first place? They just automatically have the last name, and no one in town talks about how they're brother and sister and not husband and wife. Yeah, so while Clifford and Penelope are not blood related, it's still pretty gross if you think about it. And well, we've had kind of almost 3 seasons to figure out how that whole story went, and still not any less disturbing. Penelope, however, back then does know how awful the Blossoms are, but she's kind of quiet and reserved, doesn't know how to stand up for herself, and she feels like she can't leave because they're family. They gave her, a home and a life. Now, eventually this game does cause Penelope and Hermione to get into a fight, giving them 4 more Saturday detention. So there's a lot of girl fighting in this episode, which is, I feel like we did see a lot of in like 90s TV, especially the teen shows. Now, during their time in detention, obviously they ended up becoming unlikely friends, and they found this Griffin and Gargoyles game that brought them even closer. Now, even hearing the rumor that a kid somewhere else died of a heart attack playing this game does not scare them away. So they all pick their roles and end up becoming obsessed with this game. It eventually escalates from just rolling dice to sneaking into the school in the middle of the night and full-on LARPing, where they end up finding out that other people are actually playing the game in school they didn't know about. So they join forces with that other group, who includes Tom, Marty, who's Reggie's dad, Daryl, Dilton Doyley's dad, and Hiram. Then they all mysteriously get invited to a so-called Ascension party, and that's when everything just seems to go downhill. To spice up this party, the kids don't have Jingle Jangle because that obviously was not invented yet. They hadn't ruined our pixie sticks yet. Back then, they turned another favorite childhood candy into drugs. Hiram gives everybody Fizzle Rocks, which are basically laced pop rocks. Now, everyone seems to take them except for Alice, because she has the secret that she is pregnant. It's not really a secret, the other girls know, but you know what I mean. And everyone just starts tripping out of their mind, and Alice is just watching it like, what the hell is going on? Like, what is in this drug? And while we are in a flashback episode, that does not mean that Riverdale is skimping on the musical numbers. Whenever they can throw a music performance in, they will, and we get a performance here in this episode by Fred's band, the Fredheads, which honestly, this kind of made me think of Zack Attack from Saved by the Bell. It was so cheesy that I almost started belting out the Friends Forever song over whatever they were singing in this episode. I'm just starting to feel like these singing parts, while the cast can sing, it's starting to get a little much for me, but maybe that's just me. Moving on though, everyone but Alice is high and, like I said, running wild around the school. Now, when Alice gets nauseous, she goes to the bathroom, and while she's in the stall, the lights seem to change, a red light comes on, and she comes out, and written all over the walls magically, which she didn't notice before, maybe it was there, maybe it wasn't, that the walls are basically covered with writing and that symbol that we've seen before. And the writing says, "Flip for your fate," and there are 2 chalices and a coin sitting on a sink. Now, these chalices are obviously full with the blue liquid. Alice ends up not following what that thing says and runs out of there and ends up seeing the Gargoyle King in the hallway. Then she ends up seeing Principal Featherhead enter the school, but instead of saying anything to him, warning him, saying, things are going bad, snitching, she decides to run out of the school and just, leave all those drugged up high kids in the school to fend for themselves. Now, the next day at school, Principal Featherhead isn't there, and Hermione informs Alice that there was a death that night. But no, it's not the death we were expecting. It's not from the game. It's actually Fred's dad that ended up dying. So now Fred is feeling extra guilty for being high and at this party and not home for his dad. So Alice wants to tell someone, get help about what happened that night, but none of the others want to fess up to what happened. They don't want to get in trouble, and Penelope pretty much tells her to keep her mouth closed. And then as time goes on, everybody goes back to school, tries to pretend like nothing happened. Principal Featherhead finally shows back up, but he's not alive. Instead, he's a disgusting, rotting corpse, and he happened to be in that one closet in the school that's kept locked that no one ever checks until it starts reeking. And yes, he had those blue lips. So the Midnight Club meets, where we see how long Alice has been getting information from the coroner. Like, she started pretty young, and she informs the group that Featherhead died with poison in his system. No one else, though, seems to have seen this Gargoyle King. None of them are admitting to filling up any chalices or trying to kill anybody else, because that would be stupid to confess that. In fact, they even start to look at Alice as the guilty one, because she's the one who disappeared in the middle of the night and seems really paranoid about this whole thing. Essentially, though, they have no idea who did anything. They don't even know who set up the Ascension party or even invited them to it, because, people assumed Penelope or Daryl set it up since they're like the game masters, but neither of them set it up. Yeah, this thing's just getting weirder as we go on. So they decide, for the safety of them all, and because they don't know if it's one of them in the group or not who's trying to kill one of the others, nobody knows, they decide to make that pact to never talk about it again. They then go and hide and split up pieces of the game and burn, the manual, and they hope that no one will ever see it again. After that, the group goes back their separate ways. FP and Alice have switched places since we saw them at the beginning of the episode. FP packed up his Letterman jacket and All-American Boy side and joined the Serpents. Alice ended up hiding her Serpent side and ends up going and dating Hal. Fred and Hermione moved on from their brief fling during this episode, and Hermione coupled up with Hiram, while Fred sold his guitar and started working construction in the family business. Sierra and Tom did break up, but we're hopeful that maybe one day in the future they'd be able to get back together. And Penelope pretty much devoted her life to Clifford and decided to stay at Thornhill forever, because she said the outside world was basically just too dangerous. So now we go back to the present, and Alice informs Betty that Featherhead's death was ruled a suicide, and she tells Betty that the game, it pretty much sucks you in, and the more you play, the more mortal risk you run into, because it gives you kind of permission to hurt or kill yourself or your enemies or your friends. So Alice asks Betty to not investigate, but Betty, she cannot promise that. She saw the Gargoyle King, the same thing her mom saw in the forest, and now she sees that someone is killing her classmates, so she cannot let that go. Betty does promise to not play the game though, so she heads off to fact check Alice's story. She ends up finding the windowsill where Alice carved the initials of the Midnight Club, and she finds the 2 chalices that were hidden in the trophy case. She then heads to the bunker to tell Jughead what all she's learned, but instead she's met with something she probably wishes she had never seen. Jughead, Tony, Cheryl, Fangs, and Sweet Pea all sitting in the bunker playing Griffins and Gargoyles, and, well...
The game, the Gargoyle King, I'm a level 3. And it's only a matter of time until I ascend.
So yeah, is Jughead really in the game this deep, or is this another one maybe of Betty's little hallucinations or, spells that she ends up in? I don't know, but either way, that wraps up the main events of this episode. Some other little things that happen, FP at one point mentioned that he wanted more with Alice. We had a Fred and Alice kiss, which was this kind of like a in-the-moment thing. But overall, I said this earlier, I'm not sure if anything really new was learned that required a full episode done this way. It obviously could have been done with just Alice mentioning the story pretty quickly and moving on with the story, but it was a fun little thing. I think I just expected more answers surrounding the mystery, but we didn't really get answers around the mystery. We just got a little more backstory into the parents' lives, which I think we could have probably figured out, or it had been mentioned before. But you know what? One part that I liked and didn't like was that I thought it was very cool they cast Mark Consuelos' son Michael as young Hiram, but he was like barely in this episode. He looks so much like his dad. He had to audition though. He didn't just get handed the role, but he sounded so much like his dad as well. Like if you close your eyes and listen to his voice, like he nailed it.
So, why don't we make it one?
What's that, Hiram?
Fizzle rocks. They're new. Just hit the streets.
But some questions I feel like that were raised by this episode. Why weren't Dilton and Reggie's dads called to that parental meeting in Hermione's office? You'd think Dilton's dad would have recognized what happened to his son right off the bat. He would have said something to the group and been like, oh no guys, what's going on? But you know, that never happened. So where has Dilton's dad gone? Could Dilton's dad be the one behind this midnight club thing since we haven't seen him yet? Obviously, they've been like hinting that it's connected to the farm, and the guy that runs the farm is Edgar Evernever, which would not be the same as Dilton's dad. But is something else going on here? I don't know. That raises that question. Also, why has whoever is behind this game waited so many years to make it resurface? You know, if it was Dilton's dad, that would explain why Dilton and Ben could have found it, but if he knew the dangers of it, why would he give it to his kid? So now I'm just even more confused. But how many sets of the game and, you know, those chalices were there? Who had to clean up all that writing on the bathroom if it was actually there in the first place? Or was Alice kind of hallucinating that? And who was the intended target the entire time of the poison cups or anything? Was it Alice? Was it all of them? Was it just someone who has this demented little thing of like, let's just see who ends up dying by a random pick? I don't know. But while answer-wise I may not have gotten what I was hoping for, I loved the nostalgia. I think the young actors did a great job channeling their older counterparts, and I honestly would still be up for a spin-off of the parents back in high school. Not in the kind of, you know, mysterious, noir, supernatural, whatever type of way Riverdale and other shows are, but like in that, you know, old way back in the 90s when you just have set high school shows with no real gimmicks like Dawson's Creek, Beverly Hills 90210, you know what I mean. But, you know, if they did a spin-off, I think you would keep Mark Consuelos, but then hire other people to play the parents because they wouldn't be able to do two shows. And now I'm just getting off track and rambling. So now that I'm done rambling, let's go ahead and look at the promo for the next episode.
The more I play, the more I see the patterns.
This game messes with your head.
Are you comfortable?
It's now or never, Archie.
His life is in danger.
This is not a game.
You are the light, outrunning the darkness.
Archie?
Okay, so as I film this, I've only seen the short promo. I may or may not have just showed you the extended promo, depends on the time it comes out when I'm editing this. But in that short promo, we saw Cheryl's archery skills are back. Jughead definitely seems to get deeper and deeper into this game. You can forget Dark Betty and her wig because we have so-called Dark Veronica, maybe, if that's what we want to call her, with her blonde wig. And there's a shot of Joaquin kissing Archie. Like, what is that? Is that prison romance? A miscommunication? Something to throw us off? What's going on there? I don't know, but I guess we're going to have to wait and see. But now you know what time it is. It's time for you to like get your little typing fingers ready and hit the comments down below. What did you think about this episode? Do you think it was necessary? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Do you think that whoever is behind this whole Gargoyle King thing is one of the members of the Midnight Club or somebody else? Is it connected to the farm? Basically, what the hell do you even think is going on with this show at this point in time? Please leave me all your thoughts and theories down in the comments, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my Riverdale recaps or news videos. And after that, you can click right over here to check out some of my recent interviews and other fun stuff. As always, my name is Lisa. I'm sitting in this chair talking about Riverdale and all kinds of nerdy TV and movie things. I'll see you guys next time.